Alive and Well STL is a presentation of the St. Louis Regional Health Commission with the first decade review of health status report to build a healthier St. Louis, and RareGem Productions. Power up with the positive. Learn more at oneraregem.com. That's ONERAREGEM.com.
Support for Alive and Well STL comes from Beyond Housing, helps entire communities become better places to live. Learn more at beyondhousing.org.
The Regional Health Commission works in partnership with regional health sector advocates and stakeholders to improve healthcare access, reduce health disparities, and improve health outcomes for the uninsured and the underinsured in St. Louis City and County.
Alive and Well STL with Bethany Johnson-Javois, CEO of the St. Louis Integrated Health Network.
Today we're talking about issues surrounding access to food and food insecurity in our region.
You can tell you're in a food desert if it's easier to get orange soda than it is to get an orange, and if it's easier to get a pack of beer than it is to get a gallon of milk. And unfortunately, in many areas of the St. Louis region, this is the case.
It's hard to make healthy choices when unhealthy food is more affordable than the healthier foods. But, that's a really hard habit to break when you've eaten a certain way for so long, and when you're eating for survival, the most important thing to you is to eat.
We'll be right back.
RareGem Productions, proudly presenting, promoting, and producing positive programs.
What does it mean to you to be alive and well in STL today?
I'll be glad to kick it off. I guess for me, it's really about some basics. And I think of, on a personal level, it's about family, neighborhood, being part of a community, and then being healthy within the community, with some key components of that being if there's an opportunity to be physically active, to have strong neighborhoods, and then, in the theme of our show today, to have access to healthy food.
Yeah, exactly. I think I completely concur with Dr. Hughes and, the importance of being, all around, wellness and fitness and, being part of the community, feeling that you're productive and, certainly around the issues of hunger and, poverty. It's important for everybody to be well nourished. It's just, the fuel, that drives our bodies. We don't expect our car to go anywhere with gasoline. Well, we can't expect our bodies to do anything or go anywhere, without the proper nutrition.
And I share some of the same aspects as far as being alive and well in St. Louis. Being from the South, family and community was very important to us. And as I've been in St. Louis for some years now and working in social services, I found that being healthy for myself and my family is not only important, but also for those who I serve. So having that wholeness with mind, spirit, and body is very key to me.
Great answers. Thank you for setting the context for today's show.
Alive and Well STL.
Good morning, St. Louis, and thank you for joining us today. I am Bethany Johnson-Javois, CEO of the St. Louis Integrated Health Network and host of Alive and Well STL, sponsored by the St. Louis Regional Health Commission. Today in studio, I'm excited to have a trinity here. We've got Dr. Bob Hughes, President and CEO of Missouri Foundation for Health, Sonny Schaefer, CEO of Operation Food Search, and Denise West, Director of Social Services at Guardian Angel Settlement Association. Welcome to each of you today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, food security means having access to enough food at all times to live a healthy and active life. Sincerely, you're going to educate me on what's happening and hopefully the listeners. So I'm going to throw out some words that are tossed around and you tell me what's the best way to define them. Food bank, food pantry, what's the difference? Food insecurity, big word, what does that mean? Please jump in with how do we define these words?
When they coined the term food security, I, thought it was maybe interesting, we should say. I still like to refer to it as hunger. If you're food insecure, it means that you don't have the resources to purchase enough food to feed you and your families in a healthy way. But, golly, when you haven't had lunch and you don't have much in the way of dinner, you're hungry. And, it's just a very desperate situation. And it's difficult to imagine what it must be like going to bed hungry and then waking up the next morning and having no food in the house. And I'm probably, also the best person to, differentiate between the food banks and the food pantries. But at Operation Food Search, we call ourselves a food bank. So we're sort of the middleman, if you will, between the food industry and the food pantries, soup kitchen shelters that distribute food to individuals. The reason that organizations like ours are necessary is the food industry can't deal with 200 or 300 different entities. They want to deal with one entity, collect the huge volume of food sometimes that's available, and then distribute that to the network of pantries, shelters, soup kitchens.
So according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Missouri is the #1 state for hunger. 1/6 of Missouri households are food insecure. Denise, can you help us to understand, based on who you serve every day, how does that really look on the ground?
For starters, it can be very scary, particularly for people who have not had to worry about having enough food to eat. And so for families who are hit with a sudden job loss or loss of a spouse or a partner, and then they don't have enough income to provide food for their family, it's a very scary thing. Unfortunately, there's a large number of people that has been the norm for them for a very long time. And so what we find is we see people are basically hopping from pantry to pantry in search of securing enough food to feed their family, sometimes for the day, sometimes for the week, sometimes for the month. We see upwards of 150 plus families each week in our pantry. And when we give out the food, it's amazing to me to see how excited people are about that, because coming from a place of not struggling with that, it still doesn't seem like nearly enough to take care of a family of 4 or a family of 5. And so it's a very humbling experience to watch that, but it's also very sad to see the vast numbers of family who this is how they provide food for their family. And for many of them, they don't like to have to rely on pantries, but we're fortunate for places like Operation Food Search, who provide us with those resources to be able to provide for these families, so they don't have to travel to these far out places, but they can come to their own communities and get that need met.
Dr. Hughes, last year, the cause most heavily funded by the Missouri Foundation for Health was food insecurity, or hunger. Let's talk about it in those terms. How is hunger a health issue, and why is it so important to the foundation to address?
Missouri Foundation for Health has the mission of improving the health of people in the region, and we take a very broad perspective of what we mean by health. So health is a lot more than the clinical care you get from a doctor or that you get from going to a clinic or at a hospital. It really has to do with a lot of factors in the way we live our lives. And hunger and access to healthy food is an important part of that. That influences a lot of the health issues that many of the people have in this region. So access to healthy food is a basic building block of having a healthy community. And that's one of the reasons we invested in some of the infrastructure efforts of the organizations that both gather and then distribute and provide food, and increasingly healthy food, to people all across the community.
So I'm noticing families right now are making choices about how far that dollar can stretch. And some of the data here is saying 58% of clients are choosing between buying food and paying for utilities. 42% of clients have to choose between food and medical care. 44% of clients have someone in the home who is in poor health. And St. Louis is 10% higher than the state average for all of these categories. These are choices that we would not think in St. Louis we would need to be making. What's your reaction in terms of what we need to do, or what are the interventions happening right now to try to shift these statistics?
One of the things that we do at Operation Food Search, of course, is, distribute food. And, we distribute close to 3 million pounds of food each and every month. In addition to that food distribution, however, 12 years ago, we started a nutrition education program, which we feel reaches a little deeper into the community, that helps break the cycle of poverty, teaches people how to stretch their food dollar so they're not as dependent upon the emergency food system. We also found that, low-income people have the least information on how to eat healthy and how to cook. And so this program, which is a series of 6 classes, it's led by a staff of registered dietitians, and the group prepares a meal together. They have a lesson on cooking, on good nutrition, and food budgeting skills. And at the conclusion of the class, they're given a sack of groceries to take home that they can duplicate that recipe for their families. So we feel it has a great ripple effect, in addition to teaching the individuals involved in the class. Our nutrition education department is actually our fastest growing department. We believe in it that much. We put a lot of resources to that effort.
I open this up to all three of you. Can you give us some tips on how to stretch the food dollar and how to be resilient in a situation that you find yourself in like this?
Yes, one of the other services, or actually a couple of the other services that we offer in addition to our food pantry, is utility assistance and medication prescription assistance. And so we have caseworkers who are working with the families to kind of look at their situation as a whole, to one, assess what are some other things that can be done, if possible, to minimize the reliance on emergency food. And so that may be helping a person budget the little income that they have coming in. In addition to that, we're trying to now educate people about healthier food options and utilizing those resources that are in their communities to kind of minimize that economic hardship. We are bringing a series of workshops in 2014 that we began last month that are talking about employment issues, lack of job skills, and those other underlying things that contribute to not having enough money to eat. The next workshop that we're presenting next month is actually focused on health. And so we're bringing in doctors and nutritionists and things of that nature so that people are not just hearing it from us when they come into our agencies, but they're hearing it from community partners that it's necessary and it's important that your physical health be taken care of. But what you put in your body, when it's not always in your control, that's easier said than done.
So let me comment on the good programs that both Sunny and Denise have described and make an observation that all of those efforts are not just about alleviating hunger. They're also about helping people figure out how to be healthier in what they do eat and having healthier food. This may seem paradoxical at first, but actually hunger is closely tied with another really important health issue, which is obesity. And in some ways, they have the same root cause in that we don't have adequate access to healthy food. In fact, there's a phrase called the hunger-obesity paradox because it seems like they wouldn't go together. But in fact, they're often right next to one another in communities. They both stem from lack of access to healthy food, and then the food that sometimes people do have access to isn't healthy, and it really does contribute to overweight and obesity.
So who should we be holding accountable for partnership to make sure that these things aren't happening? I can tell you, I'll go to one grocery store in one part of a community and have access to healthy foods. I go to another community and I have corner stores that sell more greasy spoon, if you will, foods. How do we have access to this vision for some of our communities? It's just not a possibility, or is it?
Existence of food deserts, is what you're describing. And, it's a difficult situation because, many times grocery stores don't go into some of the food desert areas because of economic reasons. And there just is unfortunate lack of healthy food. I always like to say you can tell you're in a food desert if it's easier to get orange soda than it is to get an orange. And if it's easier to get a pack of beer than it is to get a gallon of milk. And unfortunately, in many areas of the St. Louis region, this is the case. And, I know there are some organizations that are trying to address this. Beyond Housing has, done a great job in the Normandy area. And we just need to see more of these projects.
Any other reactions or responses?
It's definitely something that the people we serve talk about is it's hard to make healthy choices when unhealthy food is more affordable than the healthier foods. We see it in organic foods and some of the other foods. The healthier the food is, the more the food costs. And so when you're trying to stretch your dollars, I think that the first accountability has to come from an entity far above any of our heads in terms of regulations and different things like that. But at the level that we are, the best thing that we can do is educate and empower our clients as best we can. And so through partnerships with Operation Food Search and some of the other major food banks, they're putting forth more of an effort to bring fresh produce into the pantries and different things like that. They're also providing recipes that are helping people who may not know how to prepare healthier foods, so we can put those in their bags when they come. Some organizations are also offering food demonstrations and different things like that so that people won't shy away from the healthier foods. But, that's a really hard habit to break when you've eaten a certain way for so long, and when you're eating for survival, the most important thing to you is to eat.
It's a generational thing, too.
Absolutely.
You cook the way that you were cooked for, and you eat what you had, and you eat what you saw. And sometimes we don't give our communities enough credit. We have beautiful terms like community gardens. My family had the equivalent of that because they took seeds in Kinloch and put them in the ground and let them grow, and whatever came up is what they ate. But it sounds beautiful. But we do know our communities are resourceful as well. They do find ways to do great things, so that is good.
Absolutely.
So you talked about empowerment. We believe in empowerment. I want to ask each of you to give us 2 to 3 actionable things that you think listeners can do to impact hunger right now in St. Louis.
At Operation Food Search, there's always 3 things that we need. The first is food. And if any of your listeners have access to food and are not donating it and are throwing it away in the dumpster, please give us a call. We'd be delighted to pick it up. People involved in organizations, churches, communities, schools, can also do canned food drives. They're all very helpful as well. We need volunteers. We have about 4,000 volunteers that cross our threshold every year, and we always welcome more. And it's a great way to be involved in an activity that is helpful to others in the community who are less fortunate than themselves. And, of course, financial support, both large and small donations, are always welcome and, very necessary to, run any nonprofit organization. I'm happy to say that only 1% of all of our revenue goes to administration and fundraising. So we, offer a lot of leverage for those donations.
And for us, I can echo some of what Sunny said. Definitely volunteers. Time is a very precious commodity. I think that people don't realize can go a long way when you're talking about dealing with people who are hungry. So volunteering services at places that provide hot meals, places that provide food can go a long way. And it doesn't require a lot of time. It may be a couple of hours out of a month. And if you get a few of your friends to commit to doing this and to kind of giving back to the community, if you don't always have finances to give, time is certainly a precious commodity that you can give. But then also compassion coupled with action. When you have Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts who are doing the food drives and they're putting the bags on your door, don't take the bags and throw them in the garbage. Don't use the bags for trash. Fill those bags up with canned goods. When you see barrels at your local grocery stores, buy an extra canned good or 2 and put it in that barrel. Don't take it for granted that the food is going for a lost cause, because it's not. The numbers don't lie in terms of how many hungry families there are in Missouri. Also, if you belong to a church organization that holds food drives, contribute to that. We're very fortunate that we have churches that give to us, but just imagine if more gave from their congregations, then, we can feed that many more people. And yesterday there was someone who came in who volunteers and kind of pulled me to the side and said, hey, we're kind of running low on food. We need about a 3-day supply. And so when you have someone who volunteers their time throughout the year and you really have no idea of what their situation is, and they're coming to you saying that, hey, we need a little bit of food, you can't always assume that because people look like they're doing okay, that they're doing okay. You know what I'm saying? It touched me that they were comfortable enough to come to us and say, hey, you know what? I need some help. And because they volunteer throughout other programs and services, I was glad that we were able to do that. But we are only able to do that through places like Operation Food Search and some of the other local food banks and churches who have people who are compassionate, who will give.
Absolutely. Dr. Hughes, from a systemic perspective, are there any action items you want us to remember?
Well, I guess it is important for us to realize that this is all of our responsibility, and this is a big problem. About 1 in 6 people in Missouri are hungry, so it is something that we all have to work together on. I would kind of come back to the opportunity as we work on these issues to also make sure that it's healthier food. In thinking of my own experience, I know I've been influenced by what I eat by my wife, who sort of controls what the supply of food is. I remember I used to drink whole milk, and gradually I noticed that the milk changed from whole milk to 2% to 1% to skim.
And you kept drinking
And I kept drinking
Okay,
it, exactly. When we get cheese, it used to be cheese. Now it's kind of reduced fat cheese. And so the small changes that make things healthier, and I think women in their role as moms and wives and daughters often are in a position to help create healthier choices. Even though they may seem small, they're important and they add up over time. So I think that's a useful thing to do. And each of us for ourselves, when we're purchasing food, we can think about, I guess I'd suggest thinking about what kind of daily or weekly habit do you have related to food that you might be able to improve. So if you typically, when you buy a soda, you get a large regular soda, you might either get a smaller portion or you might Try diet soda once a week. Those things add up and make a difference.
And they're all very connected. That's a very good point.
Absolutely.
So in closing, there's a lot of great work that's happening, but I hear that there really is an urgency in our community and in our state to really address the issue. Can you paint a vision for St. Louis of what you would like to see or what your mission is that is advancing us toward that vision of a healthier St. Louis?
At Operation Food Search, our vision is that nobody in the community would go hungry, and especially children. And we're especially concerned with children because bad nutrition affects them today, and it affects them for the rest of their lives. And a lot of times, we looked at the cost of feeding people right now. And we can either spend money right now in a smaller denominations to make sure that people are well nourished, or we're going to spend it later on in expensive healthcare costs. And that's very important to address the problem now. It's in so many different areas, its importance can't be stated enough. To think that we have people in our community who are going hungry, and it's going to affect them for such a long range period of time. And it was mentioned also that it can be generational, and it needs to be addressed today.
One of the things that we're really focused on at Guardian Angel is kind of breaking some of those generational habits or generational curses, if you will. And the way we are attempting to do that is to educate people as much as we can. We don't want to just continue to give people to feed an immediate need, although that emergency need is there, but find out what will it take for that individual, for that family to rise above that situation and hopefully begin to start shifting those resources in other areas. So people are no longer coming to us because food is their primary need, but there's something else. So if we can minimize that through education, through empowerment, and through connecting people with the resources, not to just meet the need, but to position themselves so that need no longer exists, is where we're heading.
Anything else in closing, Dr. Hughes?
Well, I just echo both of those excellent comments and hope that as a community we can come together and work on this issue. There will probably always be some hunger, but the extent of it now, frankly, is just not acceptable. We need to make some progress on it, and it's going to take a joint effort by not only the organizations that are doing the direct work, but also from the business sector, the governmental sector. Everybody has to step up and be a partner in this.
We want to thank you for all the work that you're doing individually and collectively, and thank you for really bringing this issue to our attention. It's something very important that we need to do. And that wraps up this episode of Alive and Well STL. We thank you for joining us, and we look forward to the next show. Take care.
Alive and Well STL. Thank you for joining us today. For resources available, go to aliveandwellstl.com. If you have more questions about the program, need help, or want to connect, please call the message box at 314-333-8369. The Regional Health Commission with Chief Executive Officer Robert Friend Jr. committed to providing a detailed review of change over the past decade and 14 leading health indicators for the city and county of St. Louis. The first decade review of health status report, an update to building a healthier St. Louis. Discover the narrative, the data, and celebrate the progress already made to improve healthcare access and reduce health disparities in our region. Learn more at stlrhc.org. Alive and Well STL is another positive production of RareGem Productions. Thanks for listening.